Debbie Tuma, and we're in Sag Harbor today at a special event. We all know Billy Joel as a famous musician, and we all know he loves to fish, and he's part of the Hamptons community. And I've been a reporter in the Hamptons for like over 20 years. And we see him at all the events out here. We see him on his boat. We see that he started a boat business, and now he started a motorcycle business. And here are some of his bikes that he took regular modern technology in the terms of bikes, and he turned them into vintage, added things, retrofitted them into vintage, old-fashioned looking bikes to bring back that nostalgia that everybody likes, that they grew up with. And we're at Christy's Art Center in Sag Harbor on 3 Madison Street. This is the scene today where everybody's coming to look at these new bikes, which the owner says are considered like sculptures in art. Owner of Christy's Art Center, where we are right now, is here with us, and this is the opening of Billy Joel's motorcycle show here, 20th Century Motorcycles and how they're converted. So how did this happen at your gallery?
It happened because we see this type of bikes and the way they were produced and looked after and put together as works of art. They're very individual items, and this is a main idea of a gallery or antique show space, to say we want to produce and show handmade pieces, and this is a value in the art business, and this in future will be, as a mostly one-offs, pretty very valuable items. We treat them like sculptures, really.
That's really interesting.
This is why it's very inviting to have the show here. And, it sounds odd to say a motorbike exhibition at an art center, but it comes together very nicely. And then obviously they show some lovely paintings too, which supports the reputation of the gallery.
Well, because there's motorcycle art involved as well on the walls. So if you come to the gallery, you can see the motorcycles, all the motorcycle art, the vintage posters.
The vintage music.
You can see the jukebox from what is it, from the 40s?
It's 40s look, or even 50s look, I think, but it has been refinished.
You can even see an old gas tank back there, an old, that's pretty cool. So you
can see the happy customers too, yeah.
So is this the first time you've ever had a motorcycle exhibit?
Yeah, it's definitely, it was quite an operation, but I was surprised how fast it could be put together, especially because it is Billy's collection, so he had a good eye to put it together. But literally within one day, they arranged everything, which is pretty fast.
What do you normally have here? Paintings?
Yeah, paintings and sculptures, architectural antiques, and this goes. We make exhibitions literally every 2 weeks, running for 2 weeks, and so we're always happy to pick up ideas and keep this place alive with visitors and no, it's very helpful. And in about 2 weeks we have an exhibition with the group Save Sag Harbor, and they bring in a lot of artists. I hear about 50 or 60 artists who want to show here, and then those paintings will be for sale, and it will all go towards the effort of helping Sag Harbor to keep Main Street alive in a great fashion.
Okay, well, good luck with your motorcycle exhibit. This looks fantastic, and everybody come in and see it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Rob and Karen Schneider of Huntington, who own Lighthouse Harley-Davidson, came out to the show, and Karen's sitting in one of these sidecars, which is next to her husband on the Harley. So Karen, tell us about women's perspective of the motorcycles. Do you love them? Do you ride them?
I ride them. I also ride on the back, which I love because I get to be closer to him. The sidecar is also a fun thing to do, but any way you can do it, two wheels. Wind in your hair, can't beat it.
How old were you when you started riding motorcycles?
Well, on the back of my first one was back in the day in, gosh, I had to be in 10th grade, and I went on the back of one of my sister's friends, and he brought me to Nathan's in Oceanside, and that was a thing people used to do, and ever since then, I got bitten by the bug. And now we've driven home from Alaska and Washington State, and we go on really long rides, but it's great.
Wow.
Never get enough.
Is it a fun thing for couples to do together, Rob?
Absolutely. Plus, you can actually spend a lot of time together and never have to talk.
Okay. Well, you guys look great in these. I can't believe it. So you're with the sidecar. What's the purpose of this sidecar?
Well, it's multi-purpose, actually. It's a great way to be able to lug a lot of stuff with you. Billy primarily puts his dogs in the sidecar. He's got two pugs, and they're great passengers.
Billy in the sidecar. I can see the two pugs sitting here. That's too funny.
Yeah, and Billy's got 3 different sidecar bikes, and the pugs are always his constant companions, so they're good passengers.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I hope women can come out, I guess, so there's something here for women today too, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
If nothing else, they get to meet good-looking guys, right?
Yes, that's always a plus.
And to my left, we have a blue helmet. You'll notice that I was sitting at my desk one day at home about 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, and a FedEx package arrives, and I opened it up. It said it's from Paris, and I find this beautiful blue helmet in there, along with a note from Billy Joel saying, Rob, this is the color I'm thinking of for my Kawasaki Drifter. Can you duplicate it? And we had our painter color match it, and that's where we came up with this color scheme for this bike. And it's quite possibly one of the most expensive helmets I've ever seen, because when I looked at the price tag, it was about 500 euros, which converts to about $800 plus the shipping. So before we ever got to paint the bike, we were already $800 in just for the helmet. So it's a pretty unique piece. Excellent. This is really a collaborative effort with Billy, and it's never a straight line. It's not like you go from point A to point B and you end up at Z in a straight line. It's really, we cover ground over and over again because Billy looks at it with such a critical eye that every detail's got to be perfect. And if it's not, we have no problem tearing it apart. It's just like with his music. If his music was a straight line, you probably wouldn't enjoy it that much. But obviously it comes from, rehashing the same lines over and over until you get things exactly the way you want them. And that's why these things come out and they're so attractive to people, because so much detail went into it, so many critical eyes and critical capacities were reaching, getting everyone's hand into the pie, and they came out perfect pretty much. And it's the level of detail that we're looking for.
And Rob, this is some event that you guys have put together. Could you give us some details?
Sure. We're displaying Billy Joel's motorcycles. Billy's been eager to have the public see his bikes, not just stuff them away in a garage where nobody can enjoy them other than himself. And he really likes the public to be able to see what his interest is, what he's doing, and this is a great representation here, 19 of his classic motorcycles.
Rob, and how are you connected to this venture?
Well, Billy, again, has a keen interest in classic bikes, and he has a keen interest in things that run like new and look like old, and we help him get there. You know, my shop does all the work on his bikes, and we make it happen for him.
And Rob, where is your shop located?
In Huntington.
In Huntington.
Lighthouse Harley-Davidson.
Oh, fantastic. Could you show us some of these beautiful
Absolutely.
examples?
The one behind you is a great example. This bike was actually just completed yesterday, and it was based on a design concept that Billy had, that he wanted a bike that was representative of what you could have put together when you, say, came back from World War II, and you didn't have the money to go out and buy a brand new bike. So what you did was you went to the junkyard or your friend's garage or anywhere you could find parts and pieces, and this is one of those bikes. We call it a bobber, and a bobber was, excuse me, essentially a bike that was cobbled together from parts that were available. And again, in lieu of buying a new bike and spending all that money, you went and you just built something that you could visualize and find parts and pieces for, and this is what we ended up with.
So you guys were able to recreate through these different parts this particular model from 1949.
Yeah, you would, again, if you were coming back from World War II and you wanted a motorcycle but you didn't have the money because your check hadn't come through yet, this is what you would have put together from parts and pieces that were laying around, and you know, we're calling this a 1949 bobber.
Rob, this is another beautiful example, isn't it?
Yeah, this bike is not heavily modified. It's pretty true to what it started out as, which is a 1981 Harley-Davidson shovelhead. It's one of 981 bikes built that year in this model. And this one, again, is pretty true representation. The only thing we've done is stripped it down a little bit and added some features that, again, make it look a little more retro than it actually is. It's a 28-year-old bike, but we tried to make it look like it was a 40 or 50-year-old bike. The colors are very true to the period of the 1930s and 40s. And again, it's a very simplistic bike, and we tried to leave it that way without getting too overly aggressive with the styling on it.
A little bit about yourself. How did you come into this?
I've been riding my entire life. I started out on dirt bikes back in the late 60s, early 1970s, and graduated to street bikes and graduated to Harley-Davidsons after a while, and that's really been my passion, my interest. I collect bikes as well, and I've got about 45 in my collection, all antiques going back to 1911.
And that desire to own the antiques, it's similar to what people have long experienced in the classic cars.
Absolutely. They're basically the same people. Same people who have interest in classic cars have interest in classic motorcycles. I also collect classic cars. And you go to the cruise nights, like we do, and you see the cars from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and now the muscle cars of the 70s. And that's what they're doing with the bikes as well. You're looking at people who collect 40s, 50s, 60s. You tend to gravitate towards what was available when you were a kid and you could not afford.
Bril Gornick, who everybody knows as a well-known painter out here from Sag Harbor. Hi, April.
Hi, Deb. How are you doing?
Good. So you came out to see the show, the motorcycle show?
Oh, I did. I think it's spectacular. I had no idea I liked motorcycles this much. They're aesthetically pleasing, and of course, you can't look at them without imagine getting on them and going fast. They're really wonderful.
Are you going to buy one today?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think I'd have to learn to drive one first.
Well, it's great to see you down here. You're always into the community events, and you're on the board of Save Sag Harbor. Yes. Tell us about doing a lot of activities yourself out here.
Oh yeah, we're going to be in this space in just a few weeks. We're doing a benefit on the 27th of June. That's a Saturday from 4:30 to 6:30, and we're going to have artists from all over the area represented, myself included, and Eric Fischel, my husband, and we're going to try to raise some money for Save Sag Harbor and bring the community together. And we also have an art walk that's going on from 2 to 4 p.m. that's being led by Tula Booth and Rebecca Cooper, who are both gallery owners in Sag Harbor. So it's going to be a great day, a unique opportunity for people to get behind the scenes of the art world out here on the East End.
That's wonderful. I think Billy Joel and Alexa has been at some of your benefits too, singing, and they're into the Save Sag Harbor. You're into Save Sag Harbor, and it's a great community event that this is all doing. As a matter of fact, I just heard that I guess Billy's going to donate some of the proceeds to the police and the fire department here in Sag Harbor.
Yeah, Michael Ike, who's the proprietor of this building, has been incredibly generous. He's letting us use the space for our benefit, and in lieu of charging Billy for the space to do this motorcycle show, Billy has agreed to give a generous donation to the police and fire department, which I think is a wonderful community effort on his part.
Okay. So just tell us really 1 second, what is Save Sag Harbor for people who don't know?
Save Sag Harbor is a grassroots, all-volunteer 501c4 organization that is trying to keep the village from becoming overdeveloped and lose its character, like so many of the Hamptons have been kind of overrun and changed by various kinds of developments, which will go unnamed. So we're just trying to keep the village intact and the way that we love it so much.
And I guess Billy's into that concept because as we look around, we see that he wants to save motorcycles the way they used to look and love that vintage feeling and love the old, keep the old with the new. Okay. Thanks very much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Good luck with your benefit.
Thank you very much.
We're here at the show in Sag Harbor at Christy's Art Center with Billy Joel, and he's always loved motorcycles, and the name of the show is, Billy?
20th Century Cycles, the motorcycle as art and icon.
All right. Well, these are lovely bikes. I cannot believe there are so many amazing bikes here. Can you tell us, how did you get into this collection of the bikes the way they are today?
Well, I've had stock bikes that I've bought that were new bikes, and I've bought old bikes because I like the way they look, but they don't always work all that well. The older stuff is a kind of a pain in the neck. They're not all that reliable. The brakes don't always work. The electrics don't work. They're hard to get started a lot of the times. And so I decided to combine an old look with new technology, and I started building my own custom motorcycles. So what we have are basically new bikes that look old. Hence the name 20th Century Cycles.
Now, how old were you when you started getting into motorcycles in general?
I was a teenager. I started riding English bikes back in the 60s, BSAs, Triumphs, Nortons, those bikes. And then I kind of left it for a while, and then I got back into it again in the late 70s. Started buying bikes and customizing bikes and messing around with them. And then we started this company because people seem to be interested in the idea. They like the way old things look, but they like the way new things work. So it's a combination of that.
So the new bikes that you bought, they weren't quite as exciting and interesting, and so you started this with a partner, the partner that has the bike company in Huntington, his name? Rob?
Well, Rob Schneider has a dealership in Huntington, which is a Harley dealership, but there's a couple of other people who do work for me as well. There's a guy down in Atlanta who's built a couple of bikes. Mine are quieter than that. I don't really like loud bikes. There's a guy in Australia who's doing some work for me right now. So we subcontract it out all over, depending on what kind of bike we're building.
Okay. And so you two decided, you and Rob, that you wanted to make the new bikes look old. Now, how does that happen? How do you take a brand new bike, and what are some of the things that you do to it? If you can show us some of the features you add or something to make it look old.
Well, there's a couple of different ways. You can just take a stock bike and put some old parts on it. That's one way. Started out life as a 2006 Harley-Davidson Road King, which is basically a touring bike.
Right.
And we gave it a completely different paint job, the different tank badge, which was from 1955. We put flex pipe on the exhaust pipes, see that? We added a rail to the seat. We put the old-fashioned seat on it, put an old-fashioned speedometer on it, an old-fashioned windshield, custom-made windshield bag, smaller signal lights, some old-fashioned shifter pads, painted up a lot of the covers, put old-fashioned spotlights on it, added rails to the fenders. I mean, this is essentially, we took a stock bike and added a lot of old-looking parts to it.
Wow.
So that's one way of doing it.
Right.
These are actually old hand grips, too. So little by little, it's all in the details, even a little fire extinguisher on the attachment. Plus, we have an old-fashioned looking sidecar. So this would have been like a 1955 era, like Elvis Presley kind of era bike.
Wow.
We put this old light rack on it, old-fashioned exhaust tips, just a lot of old-looking parts, and you got to track down all these parts. And we also put different covers on the cylinders. We put what looks like a panhead cover, which would have been a 50s, 60s era motorcycle. It was called Harley was called a panhead. See, this looks like an upside-down frying pan. And then there's the bikes that you build from scratch, where you start with the motor, like that bike. That's a Knucklehead Motor. It's actually a brand new motor from 2007. And then we added the different cylinder covers, which are called Knucklehead covers. We made different, all kinds of different covers were fabricated from scratch, old-fashioned footrests. We fabricated the tank from scratch, a custom dashboard, looks like that's called a skull dash. Again, old-fashioned grips, completely customized seat. Everything on this bike is pretty much custom. So that's another way of doing it. You fabricate the entire bike from scratch. It's a more difficult process than what this was. And then that's a similar thing. We started with a 2005 Sportster, and we, little by little, added old parts to it. The flex pipe on the exhaust, the old-fashioned air cleaner cover, the old 1957 era tank insignia, old-fashioned hand grips, the shroud, old headlight. If you touch this rivet, you'll see this is just painted on.
And it looks like a real, what is it, a rivet? Rivet?
It's supposed to be a real rivet, but it's actually painted on.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot they can do with this to make it look old, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of old details. We put shovel head cylinder rocker covers on them to look old. It's called the shovel head look. This is what we started to do, was basically create an homage or a tribute to the original 1957 Sportster, which was the first year they came out. That painting is a painting of the original 1957 Sportster. So we took a 2005 Sportster and made it look as close to that as we could. That's taking a stock bike and customizing it to look old, as opposed to the other bike I showed you, which is building it from scratch. And you know, it's easier to do with Harleys because they start out looking like older bikes to begin with. It's more of a retro look on Harleys. We do it with all kinds of bikes: Japanese bikes, European bikes, racing bikes, and hence the idea of 20th century cycles.
Tell us about the springs on the seats. That's something that makes it look old too? They don't have that anymore?
Well, in the old days, they didn't really have rear suspension. We do have shocks. There are shock absorbers on this bike, rear shocks. In the old days, those are the old style shocks. It was the early technology, but they needed help with the suspension, so they'd put springs under the seats so you wouldn't get, you know, your butt kicked too much.
So what kind of people are you, people can come and look at these bikes. The show is on till June 20th.
Today's our opening day. We run till June 20th, and we may even go longer if there's enough interest.
Okay, and what kind of people take an interest in these kind of bikes would want to come and have their bike retro-fitted like this?
Well, I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? I don't really know yet. It's kind of a different idea, and a lot of people like the way old things look, but they like the way new things work. So I'm hoping that's the kind of customer we get.
So do you find a lot of people love the nostalgia of all this, like coming in, they're getting good reactions?
Yeah, you know, people are fascinated with older stuff, and that's in really good shape, because a lot of times vintage stuff is not in good shape at all. So they go, wow, these were really renovated to look great. I said, no, these are brand new. That's why they look good.
All right, tell everybody what you call them. New, what is it? New scoots for old toots or something?
New scoots for old coots.
Oh, new scoots for old coots.
Yeah, or new machines for eternal teens.
Are you an eternal teen?
Probably. Yeah, especially on stage.
So, Billy, people mostly know you around here for your boat building business on Shelter Island, and now you're getting into the motorcycle business, essentially, right?
Yeah, I've been building the boats for a long, long time. I've actually been building the motorcycles for at least 15 years, but not really marketing them as a company until recently. But we're still building the boats. The Shelter Island Runabout is still in production. We've sold 52 of them, and it's a popular boat. It's just basically the same idea. It's a new technology in the boat. It goes very fast, but it looks like an old boat. A modern ride with classic pride.
Rob, you're going in with a partnership with Billy on these bikes, and tell us a little bit about the partnership and how it started.
Well, it started, Billy stopped in the store when we first opened back in 2000. And, again, he had a keen interest in motorcycles, being an enthusiast for probably 35, 40 years. And he finally bought a bike from us in 2005. And about 3 weeks later called and said, can we do something with this bike? Can we make it look like the original Sportster from 1957? And I thought it sounded like a great project. And, being a collector of antique motorcycles myself, it was right up my alley. So we then endeavored to make his 2005 Sportster look like 1957. I think we accomplished it.
Was that this original one right over here?
That was this red and white one over here, which has actually been transformed a couple times. And we're still trying to get it where we think it's right. Anybody else looking at it would think it's perfect the way it is, but we tend to be looking with a little more critical eye and always changing things, always trying to make it even better. But I think we did a pretty good job with this bike.
And after he did that one bike, then he decided to do other bikes?
Yeah, then he immediately started on another 2005 bike, a Springer, which he wanted to look like a 1946 model. And again, it kept snowballing into a bigger project. And again, that's the other bike that you see behind us, the red and black one, which we've shown this bike in several shows, and people who were collectors back in the 40s or of bikes of the 40s think it's the real deal. Meanwhile, it's a 2005.
And then you guys decided other people, if Billy liked it, other people might like it also?
Absolutely. People were always asking Billy, where can I get this work done? How can I get a bike that looks like this? Modern technology with old styling. And that's why we decided to start putting it into practice and really just doing it as a business.
So is this the first exhibit that you've had of all the bikes?
This is the first major exhibit, yes. We've done piecemeal work where we've shown them in Florida and different venues in New York, and people have seen one or two of the bikes. It's the first time they're seeing the whole collection of 19 bikes.
Right now there's 19 bikes here that you can come in and see. Billy Joel altogether owns 31 bikes. He took all these bikes out of his own garage in Sag Harbor to right over here to Christie's Art Center on 3 Madison Street in Sag Harbor. And this exhibit you can come in and see.